Hello and welcome to the next episode of this series of seminars. This one is called Frequently Asked Questions. So I will try to answer certain questions that I have received over the last couple of weeks from colleagues, peers, and also other people from around the from other educational institutions concerning the events that have taken place and how we had to dramatically change our teaching styles by going from a classroom surrounding to a much more digital surrounding. So without further ado, I'll just open my questions. Question number one, how has COVID affected the teaching process? Well, it wouldn't be a secret, or would it be banal if I would just say that it has completely changed everything. But it has. It really has, because just as I have tried to explain in my previous seminars, the project-based learning system is turning out to be very crucial and important at this moment. So going away from a traditional knowledge-based approach to a much more interactive, where we have to use these online tools, where we have to use computer technology to allow us to move further, to start engaging with our students. This is quite a challenge for a lot of people. This is quite a challenge for, especially, and please don't feel offended if you feel offended by what I say, by the elder generation or the elder generation of teachers, which has been teaching in a certain form, in a certain way for the last 20, 30, 40 years, and automatically something is changing. So in this sense, it has altered the perception of many people, but potentially it's a good thing, because many of the teachers that I've talked to have said that they welcome this change because it allows them to spread their wings, so to speak, and to go beyond a typical school curriculum, although definitely they are still limited by the teaching programs. So that's one thing that we will have to take into consideration once we go, well, further down the road. However, it is a game-changing event, and for those of us who were prepared, because we were using technology in language learning, for example, or in any other fields of education, it wasn't as stressful for us at the beginning. It allowed us to basically make elements which we used on an everyday basis work. Since I was originally a fan of the project-based and challenge-based approach from the very beginning, I used technology solutions in my classroom, working with languages very often. For example, in my translation classes, we did a lot of work on subtitles. So using applications in order to create subtitles in real time. So from my perspective, when we were in a computer laboratory and the students were using these computers, and I was monitoring their progress and engaging in conversation whenever a problem arose, then if I was doing it in a digital reality, or if I was doing it in a real laboratory, it made no difference to us, meaning to me and my students. So when we were able to connect via these multi-channeling systems, whether it was by Zoom or by Teams, and students could share screens and I could send them into working rooms, they were doing exactly the same thing that they were doing in the classroom as was in real life. So there are areas in which this was a natural shift, and again, we didn't feel that much of a difference. But again, in practical terms, where you had classes like conversation lessons or anything else, we found it much more difficult for people to engage over the computer. It took some time to get used to the fact that you have a computer screen in front of you, and that you actually have to be visible on camera. because talking to a blank screen is not the most fun of things. But there are certain things that we can surpass. We have these tools. We have these tools which allow us to go forward. And therefore, education has been changed. The form in which it is given to us has been changed. But what we need to work on is the content and the way that we, I don't want to use the word sell it, but the way we deliver it. That it needs to be delivered on a totally new basis, which will, but that again may not be a systemic answer there, because one system does not work. It has many flaws, so it needs to have many patches along the way. It needs to be a well-constructed algorithm, but it all will always be built on individual contact between the teacher, the language instructor, the language user, or anyone, in fact, or a conversation, the person with whom you're holding a conversation, and then using that to find the golden ratio, or as they say, find the balance. Okay, let's go to the next question. Question number 2, what are the greatest dangers of online tools? Well, it depends on which tools you're talking about. If you're talking about social media, that's definitely dangerous because of the way it's been constructed to be addictive. But it is a part of everyday life right now. So just going away from social media and saying that I'm not going to use this is like cutting yourself off from the reality that many young people are living in. Social media can be used in various positive ways. It does not necessarily need to be used for the bad things we find on the internet. To give you an example from my experience, I always have groups on social media because I know that my students and my pupils, or at the language school where I work at, or the university where I do my teaching, we form online Facebook groups. These Facebook groups are intended for one purpose: to ensure communication. That means because I have them within the group and they have me, I can inform them in real time what's happening. So in a pre-COVID situation, when I was driving to work and got stuck in traffic, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to make it on time, not of my fault, because for example there was an accident, I would easily just post on the wall and say that I'll be late 15 minutes, stuck in traffic, don't go anywhere. So that clearly sends them a message. If there was no connection like this, they would automatically assume that I just didn't arrive and the students would leave, and that the class would not take place. So maybe instead of dangers, I want to show the positive side of this. It's easier to share materials because email as a form of communication, in my opinion, is dead. Our inboxes are filled with spam email because we've signed up to so many different things. We've given Google basically everything. So in the large amount of emails coming in, it turns out that this would be a much better way in order to communicate. Of course, using various devices such as Google Drive. So I'm sending the link to my students. Okay, here's the material for next class, or here's something you should really take a look at, and I'll put it on Google Drive, and they can simply download that. Or I say, if you have an essay or a paper, don't send it by email to me, but put it online. So then I can easily order certain things. So that's definitely the good side. The bad side of using this type of technology is basically that it leads to, it's much more difficult, and it's shown that people are much more tired. So they're being, what's called maybe overworked, because it's not natural for most of us to sit in front of a screen. If we go to language classes and wait there and sit there for 5 or 6 hours in front of our computers, then we naturally feel much more tired. So that's one of the dangers. So the right amount of material done online, vis-a-vis the right amount of material that is done practically by the student is a balance that I think very much needs to be taken into account. How do we retain our cultural heritage online? Well, that's a good question. I could say impossible, but again, nothing is impossible, and we have proven that that this can go on. My advice for this point would be to continue with the guidelines that we have set for the practice exercises from our language repository. A lot of the activities which are there require the use of online tools. So you're still doing it in a sense. Then the online thing is forwarding your cultural heritage. It allows you to continue to have fun with languages, to be unique. So it is a process that is difficult, but I'm not going to tell you how, because I think that's what every one of us needs to figure out for themselves, right? One of the greatest weaknesses of an online community is the fact that people have stopped decision making individually and are waiting for others to tell them what to do. As a positive example, maybe not in terms of heritage, and maybe I'm just skipping away from the question, but I feel I need to say this right now. When we found out that we were going online, I think it was March 11th, when COVID lockdowns began, I sat down with my students before they went home and made a clear division of who's responsible for what and what we're going to be doing, right? So in this case, they knew from the very beginning how everything was going to take place and what sort of measures they should take in order to continue with this online learning. So in this case, if we're talking about how to maintain this cultural heritage, so how to keep meeting up, just, well, online meetings are also a form of interaction. So in this sense, it may not be the same as sitting in the family club, in the multilingual language club, but it is at least a start. So don't give up on that. What are the most effective tools? Okay, this is something which is, well, will be dependent on how you're working. So first of all, let's talk about various tools that you can use for teaching. Teaching, you have Microsoft Teams, and you have one device, one application which I'm extremely proud of and I really like and I use, and that's Blackboard. But there are other ones like Workplace, for example, where you could use for communication within a group. When you're looking at managing projects, you can use, for example, Trello or Active Collab or Jira. If you're looking at document distribution, you can use Google Documents. If we're talking about video conferences, you can use Zoom. You can use Skype. You can use Cisco WebEx. And there's a whole amount of different things. But the whole point is maybe not what is the best tool, but what is the best way of utilizing that tool. In other words, the way that you can creatively think of how to put the content that your audience intends in a way that is engaging. So if you want to use simply Communicator to communicate, try to engage your partners, your students, your business partners, or anything. But here we're talking about languages and language schools and language family clubs. So think of a way in which you, knowing that you're talking to a digital native, and we're talking about the young people who have been using these things for years, how you can use that tool in order to engage, to get them engaged in the work. I already talked about this in one of our previous meetings, that if you speak technology, if you use it the way that the young people are doing, then it'll be easier for you to communicate. So again, the choice is yours. If you go online, you're going to find millions of opinions on why you should use this technology over this technology. Well, the answer is simple. One corporation is fighting with another corporation for its users, right? It's what best suits you and lets you achieve your goals. To give you again another example, when I run my translation classes, I chose a program that is called Subtitle Edit, because again, it's much more user-friendly. It's more intuitive, and that's what I would advise people when they choose technological solutions here, right? Pick the ones which are most intuitive, because if they're intuitive, they're easy to access. If they're easy to access, they're easy to use, and if they're easy to use, you will have more engagement. So again, play around with some of them. Think which you would use, and then look at your audience and try to think whether it will be equally as engaging with your audience as it would be to you. What are the greatest traps that await? Oh yeah, so the greatest traps would be overworking. Because in a digital online world, time seems to flow in a different way. I'm not trying to break the laws of physics here by demonstrating this. I'm just trying to say that here we tend to lose the track of time. If we are in a regular workplace, if we are in a school, then naturally, when you hear the bell ring, that's a signal, okay, and we're done for today. But when we get involved in online, there's no bells, there's no time limits. People usually overwork and they go too much. So what I would very much suggest is that you really plan out your day in such a way that you have an equal work-life balance, right? Many people who work from home, and this has been documented, that they feel more anxious and depressed because they don't go out to see people. Well, this is one of the things that also awaits and that can lead to burnout, which is something which we have seen over the last couple of months. So get like a schedule. Prepare a schedule that your work hours are between, let's say, 9 in the morning until 4 or 5, depending on what type of job you're doing, and try to go in those limits. Try to go within those limits, and don't try to break those limits. Because if you break those limits, then you're going to push yourself even harder and move forward. And you go backwards than rather forwards. Always remember about short breaks where you have to stand up and stretch up and at least move around the living room and create a place within the house or the apartment which will be the workplace, so that you can leave your workplace. So that's, I think, the key, that the place where you live and the place that you work, even if you're at home, shouldn't be the same place, because then if you're working from the same place and you're living in the same place, then which is which? And that would be obviously the natural trap that awaits. This is a good one, connected. Is globalization a good idea? Of course it is. A globalized world. A digitized, globalized world, well, that's something we're going to have to grow to accept. Globalization was a big, or is still, a big social experiment in how people of many cultural backgrounds, many linguistic backgrounds, and as we've already tried to explain, thought backgrounds and thought structuring backgrounds are in one place, and they have to start to cooperate. They have to start to communicate, and they have to start to use the arts, or start to use the art of understanding. So this is pushing us very much further than it was in the past, where such international contact wasn't on a daily basis. Right now, through technology and through travel, we have the ability to go to places that we would never have had the ability to go before. Uh, they simply allow us to do that, and it's a test because we learn from other cultures. We learn to better our culture. We learn to better ourselves through this. And the most important thing here, which we need to remember, is not to judge. But again, since we're all interconnected via the internet, and the internet is such an important part and such an important piece in this puzzle, we're going to be connected even more. Because, look, right now, if we even travel around the world, we're not seeing all those many differences. We find the same things in stores. We find the same. We find we eat almost the same products. So it is a globalized environment, and the most advantageous situation of this is that it's easier for us to understand. That's why the whole idea, and I support very much the idea of a multilingual family club, because that supports, and what I've been talking about for hours and hours about, that supports the interculturalization and multiculturalization of people and as an environment, right? So, and this allows us to understand even more. But now with technology, it goes even further. So we're not running away from technology. The most important thing, and even when it comes to teaching, even when it comes to understanding, is that we have to accept certain things. And let's accept that the world has changed. And I'm not saying COVID, which has pushed us online into working online, etc. But this was coming. This was coming for a long time. So let's not. Let's now start thinking about solutions that we can find for this whole situation. Let's try to see how we can improve upon existing models. Not to critique the existing ones and saying that they simply don't work, but let's try to go further and let's evolve more and start thinking that this COVID situation, maybe it will end, but there will be another COVID-like situation, and contemporary economy just needs us to maintain on to continue with certain things online. But there are benefits to this. Look, right now you can study at a foreign university, and you could do it from the position of your computer. So if you're accepted, then you could go to a great university in Hong Kong, right, or in London, without the need to leave the home. So, in fact, education and information is coming closer to us, but at risks. There is a trap here. Many people call this the age of information, but they also call it the age of disinformation. So this is another skill that we have to learn to adapt to. In other words, we have to know how to filter all that information which we are being bombarded with through the internet. And that would be a kind of a new globalized danger weapon of fake news, of fake science, of non-truth, or even fake truth, as some people have recently called it, that we need to learn to meander around that. So you don't have to fear it. You just have to accept certain changes, accept that they have happened, and move on. And move on. I think that is the most important lesson that we can all take out from this pandemic situation and from going online. And we have to just move forward. Nothing more. We have to move forward. There is no going back. So these were the most frequently sent questions over the last months. I hope that you agree with me. If you disagree with me, naturally, we can have a civilized conversation about that. The more we talk to each other, the more we learn. The next in the series, I will be interviewing people from the real world, as you can say. We will talk about the importance of learning languages, the importance of multilingualism, the importance of multiculturalism, and how to deal with these elements in an ever-changing reality. So thank you very much for listening. I wish you all the best. Bye-bye and see you soon.